A very good evening to you, gentlemen, and welcome to From Beyond. You're muted, mate, just to let you know.
There we are. Good evening,
That's
everyone.
professional.
That's a good tune, even if you did write it.
Even if I did write it, yeah, it's a good tune. It is.
I'm going to have to move my camera. My beard's getting so long I can't get it all in the shot. So. Look at that.
It's fine. It's fine. My hair's getting so long, I just...
Yeah, I noticed you got to let it down today, and it's looking all
I had it down.
stylish.
I had it down the other day as well. I've been a bit lazy with it, see, just putting it up. It's just... It's easy management, isn't it? You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Looks like it's sliding off the back of your head.
yeah, I know, it's right up
Grab
here
it
now.
and pull it forward.
Yeah, it needs to be like there, you know.
Now that looks good.
Yeah,
Just grow it real long and flip it over the top.
There you go. See, there you go. Look,
Yeah,
there you go.
yeah,
Look,
yeah.
see what's wrong with that? Don't mock me, brother. My other mother, brother.
You'll have to go walk around on, what is it, what's the fashion place? Carnaby Street or whatever it used to be. With the,
Yeah. Or oh, what's that place?
King's Row.
What's that place in yeah, King's Row, or in Italy, what's it called?
Yeah, it's, I don't know.
Milan.
And yeah, the fashion
Milan.
capital.
It's actually Milan, dear, but
In
darling,
Paris, you
Milan.
go to Paris and take a little
Yeah.
turn on the catwalk.
Paris
It's
is
song.
Paris. You must say that. You must have the ra. It's
Yeah.
Paris.
You know, you could pass for a fashion designer. You know,
I could pass for an idiot.
now, let's not get personal here. Who we got with us? Midnight Society. Nicole is in the chat. How you doing, sweetheart? Let's see here.
Hello, mummy to be.
Got an
with the baby
update
bump.
for you here.
Mummy to be with the baby bump. It's mummy to be with the baby bump. It said mummy to be with the baby bump. It said mummy to be with the baby bump.
I have it written down here. I've just got to find it.
Well, I thought it was good. I got enjoyment out of it.
Oh,
See,
yeah,
I can
that
rap
was
too.
great.
You didn't even know that, did you guys? Did you?
Did not.
Learn something new every day, don't you?
Hot here today. It's like 95 freaking degrees, and
It's quite warm here today. I put
and
up my
I've
new
got to
swimming
leave
pool
the
today.
air on behind me because
Yeah, Steve, I
It's hot.
put up my new swimming pool today, and it's huge, and it took me...
how long did it
freaking
take you to
ages.
blow it up?
No, it's not a blow-up one, mate. It's a proper standalone thing, you know, with the proper bracketed sides and stuff. It's 13 foot by 6 foot. It's
That's a
it's
nice
a big
size
enough
pool.
pool.
Takes
I'm
up your
actually-
whole patio, probably, doesn't it?
Well, no, it's a good portion of it, but, you know, I've had a 15-foot one before, but it wasn't as good as this actual pool. So even though it's slightly smaller, it's actually a better pool. But yeah, the pump's all set up and everything's ready to go, and I've put the chlorine tablets in the floaties, and they're floating around currently. You know, because as soon as I have enough water in there to be able to put the floaties in, they're in. You know, get that chlorinated.
Then you'll be floating around out there with your Jameson or whatever you got.
Well, Jameson's and Coke, darling. There you go. Yes.
I'm a trader tonight. I've got Starbucks.
Just the kind of guy I am, and everybody. Welcome to From
Should
Beyond.
be an interesting show, folks. But it is 11 weeks and 5 days until the arrival of the baby.
Oh, he's getting close now, mate. He's getting close.
Yeah,
Hello, Henry. Hello, D-Rock.
40 weeks. I mean, that seemed like a long time. It's like, wow, we got to wait 40 weeks for a baby.
No, it's nothing, mate. Honestly, enjoy that moment, mate, because I tell you, embrace it. I hope you took lots of video of you stages of the baby the belly growing and stuff. Because I tell you,
You got pictures.
it
I
goes
just
like
recently
that, and you forget it as well. You know,
got that new camera I was showing you to document everything else. So,
yeah.
but,
But
we're
honestly,
excited,
you're going to be baby mad, mate. Honestly, you're going to.
oh yeah, we've had baby brain. And
Yeah.
then Saturday night, you have to sing Tom Jones for us, please. He's a baby. Whoa, whoa, whoa. We've been walking around the house.
So you started me
singing
off in the
that.
key, and I followed your key, and I should never do it.
Yeah, I can't sing. But anyway, we would like to hear
I'm
that.
happy to have a
please,
little look at that Saturday. I'll even get the words up for the Tom Jones song and just
just remember,
muck around
baby,
with it a little bit.
not lady.
You know?
The other night, this one starts 3 times a lady. That's our other baby favorite.
Three
Once
times
twice,
a baby.
3 times a baby.
It's 3 times a baby. Yeah, baby.
We get a little
Oh,
Jimi
yeah.
Hendrix, Foxy Baby. Dur, dur, dur,
Ooh,
dur.
foxy baby.
Let's see who else we got here. D-Rock's here.
Ooh,
Henry Nelson. How you doing, Henry?
foxy lady. Love a bit of Hendrix, me, mate.
Yep. Interesting story. That when I lived in the Pacific Northwest, I did visit his grave there. It's right outside Seattle. I can't think of the little place.
That is one of my idol self-taught guitarist musicians there, because being a self-taught guy,
And he played it upside down and backwards.
mate. And do you know how he started? Exactly like I did, not knowing what the hell he's doing, just pressing notes. And the thing is, right, you get an authenticity from doing that. Right, I may not be the bestest guitarist in the world, but I'm very authentic because I picked it up myself. I taught myself. And
that's the best way to learn anything. I tried.
Same as piano. There's an essence to it.
I can do like an open tuning and then bar chords up and down the neck, but that's about it. I can't do much.
You're talking double Dutch to me. I know what a bar chord is, but I don't know what it is. Do you understand?
Yeah, exactly.
I know that the ethos. I know the engineering of it, kind of thing. But I don't know because I
don't understand the notes and the fifth and the seventh sustained and all that. That's just it's math and it's numbers.
Double Dutch. My mate was doing that tonight. He said, "So when you're playing this and playing that," and because I started doing, like, and he was like, "So when you're playing that, what you're doing is you're doing this and you're doing that." And I said, "Look, you're just speaking language that means nothing to me." I said, "What I do is I go that, and I press those notes." I said, "And the fact that I know the timing and stuff is just built in." I said, it's
and you've got the muscle memory there. I've watched you play. You don't have to look at the keyboard or anything. Just your fingers know where to go.
I do for enjoyment, to enjoy what I'm doing. It's a weird thing. You kind of look for enjoyment now rather than because I have to. I know where my hands are supposed to be. They have like you said, a muscle memory. They know where they hit. Anyway, should we get on with
shall we get on with it? We're going to do PA MUFON or Pennsylvania MUFON conference speaker Jan Stein on crop circles tonight. So back to the crop circle.
Am I right in saying PA is Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Right, because I was confused by the PA thing, but I did think to myself, is that Pennsylvania?
Yeah, Pennsylvania. It's the East Coast MUFON conference from October 16th, 2010 at the Westmoreland Community College. And I would also like to say that this video falls under fair use. Copyright disclaimer here. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research, all of which we're doing right here tonight. And fair use is permitted by this copyright statute that otherwise might be infringing. Nonprofit educational personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Furthermore, from beyond, Link, myself, and staff management, nobody involved here owns this content. All credit goes to its rightful owner. No copyright infringement intended.
Stamped.
Oh, and then we got the short version of that in the crawl down there. Thank you.
And that's what the crawler is doing. Yeah, there you go. So that's just to double protect us, ladies and gentlemen, so we don't get booted off and shut down like we did that. Was it twice we had that? It was
twice we got shut down.
Yeah, but that's a badge of honor as well, though.
It is. We're earning our stripes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way I see it, and I don't see it as a negative. I see it as all right, okay.
It's a learning and growing experience.
Yeah, we have to learn like everybody else that's been doing these fringe things. I mean, there's people that have been doing these fringe shows for far longer than myself. Like Goof On, and there's Alien Girl 111, and there's your man SOR. Spaced Out Radio. We all love these sort of things, though, don't we? We love these conversations, because it's so intriguing. It's
stuff that rattles around in my head when I can't sleep. But I love the crop circles, and
that's one of my
night
favorite
we were talking
subjects.
about
I've said this.
fractals and the Fibonacci sequence, and
Yep.
it's all in the numbers.
And
God
I
is
think it's
in the
all in
numbers.
there. I think it's a very mathematical thing, and my own personal belief. It's just my own. It doesn't have to be critiqued, or you don't have to get upset, ladies and gentlemen. It's just my personal thing. I see them as some sort of conversation that's happening, and I
Yeah,
think, personally, I think that powers that be, whoever have studied this, know the answers
I
because
think
they're
they
not
got the
stupid.
decoder ring out of Cracker
I
Jacks,
think
and
they've
they
got
know
the
what it says.
decoding. Yeah, they
So we
decode
don't
it.
know what it is.
We don't have a clue, but just like the Roswell thing, it's like nothing to see here, nothing to
Yeah,
see
move
here. What
along.
you saw, what we saw yesterday as really weird material is only nothing but a balloon.
It's only a balloon
It's
with some crash test dummies. Nothing. Go
yeah, and
move
I
along.
think, I mean, come on,
Go milk the
the
chickens
powers
or
that be
get
have
the cow eggs.
access. The powers that be have access to mathematicians of extraordinary value.
Yeah,
And so y- y- just even the concept of that. If we knew, for instance, someone that was mathematically genius, they would probably help us out in this regard. We can't do it because as, as far as mathematicians go, or physicists or anything like that, we're simpletons, and
yeah.
we don't even understand what they mean
And
when they
the
discuss such
government,
things.
the military, they have cryptologists, code breakers,
They
and
do.
they
Yeah.
probably got a think tank somewhere that sits and they know if they know what they're looking for, they can probably find all kinds of symbols and signs and everything. And then in a lot of
Exactly.
like the Jewish numerology, the gematria, things like that, there's stuff hidden everywhere. You just have to know where to look.
Indeed. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they
Well,
like
there's
to
still
hide it in plain sight. That's just a better way to rub your nose in it. Hey, David
my
Payne.
my very good friend Dave Payne. He's just left my house now, and he's just gone home. Welcome in, Dave. It's great to see you, buddy. You are a G. He writes music like myself, but he's a bit more of a DJ, really. But he slants in playing guitar and doing other things. He enjoys his music, does Dave. He's a very avid music lover, ain't you,
Yeah,
buddy?
I heard y'all back there, and I
Yeah,
was in the
yeah.
green room, and I heard some playing and singing and stuff there.
Once we start chatting about music, Dave will tell you. We just,
Yeah,
the same,
we
kind
need to
of the
get him
same
on
as,
our radio show sometime. Radio1fa.com. Coming
well,
soon.
yeah.
Still working the kinks out of it. But
But
got
Dave's a
baby
very
brain.
shy guy. He's not really into the whole talking to people thing like that. He keeps himself to himself. He's a very personal guy.
He lets his music do the talking.
Wow, he's a grower, not a shower. So are we gonna get on with this showing this
All right.
video? Have I got a presenter or
Yeah,
do
let's
you?
let's let's present this video
So
here, and
I am
there
not.
you go.
Hang on. Let's make sure it starts off so we know where we are.
Yeah, gotta back it up.
So
She's a little hard to hear, so we'll mute her mics. I'm sorry. Got to have the air
yeah,
conditioning on behind me. It's 95 degrees here in New England.
yeah, it has to be done. I've got a fan on behind me, mate. But it's only the fact that I'm in the way of the microphone. You can't hear it blowing against the
Yeah,
microphone.
I've got a screen here, and I'm in
And
front of the mic, so hopefully not too
Dave,
much proximity.
cheers, buddy. Cheers for having a little tinkle with me earlier, mate. It was good fun. Always a pleasure to have you around, mate. You know
A
that.
little tinkle. I thought you went to the bathroom by yourself.
No. All right. A tipple. I say a tipple. There you go. A tipple of a dram of whiskey.
You have the
You know.
tipple, and then you go tinkle.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah. Oh, Mark Shed Talk. Hello, fella. Good to see you.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Well,
Thanks for
let's
joining
do
us.
this then.
Let's
do
start
this.
it off. Hit the
Three
button.
two
Bud.
325. Here we go. Muting, shutting up.
So I am not an expert on crop circles, but I've been fascinated by them for at least 10 years or more. I've been reading about them since I was pretty young. I'm going to share with you today a little bit about my personal experience. You're going to see some of my own personal research that I have done, that I've prepared for you here. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the tools and techniques that we use when we investigate crop circles, in case it's something you're interested in and want to participate in MUFON needs field researchers. I'm also going to talk along these lines with the tools and techniques, just mostly about the formations that have happened in Pennsylvania and also in the United States. Most of us know what's happening in England. We see pictures of these incredible formations happening in England. But I'm going to share with you what the anomalies are in the crops through taking you through some investigations that happened in crop circles in the United States. I'm also going to share with you a little bit about the history as well about crop circles in the United States and how we do the forensics on them to determine what's a potentially hoaxed formation, meaning man-made with boards or boulders or something like that, a deliberate destruction of a farmer's crop, and what's made anomalously by some of these energies that we don't completely understand, but we've been able to mimic in a lab, and for that matter, to a certain extent understand what's causing some of these. Then I'm going to correlate a little bit of this with ancient mounds. There seems to be a correlation, and we have a lot of ancient mounds in the United States that a lot of people don't know about. And then I'm going to review some of the theories about what we think causes these formations. And I'm probably, hopefully, going to have time to share with you some closing ideas to consider. I'm not really going to be evaluating the geometries. That's really for another lecture and one I would love to give at some point. First off, we need to address the fact that formations are hoaxed. We know that. There are actually professional advertising teams of artists that create these advertisements in crops. When this happens, it's really a great tool for a crop circle researcher to set up a video camera, film them, see how many people there are, how long it takes them. Then we've got the crop to analyze and compare to an anomalous formation and see the difference between the two. Just to tell you, this one was filmed by a good friend of mine in England. And he said it took about 4 people 12 hours of daylight to create it, and they weren't even finished by the end of the day. Doug Bauer and Dave Shirley came out on a BBC special in 1993 and claimed that they were making all the formations in England and hinted that they were sort of making them all around the world. They're still getting credit for it in a lot of newspapers. Journalists don't seem to know that Dave Shirley has been dead for 6 years, and Doug Bauer has severe arthritis, and he's in a nursing home now. They were both beer buddies and heavy drinkers. This I snapped a photo of 2 weeks ago in the Heathrow Airport as I was running through it. It's an advertisement for an IT company. So advertisers are paying hoaxing teams, and there are professional hoaxing teams out there, and I think that companies seem to feel like this is a popular way to promote their product, to do something in a crop. Of course, farmers are paid for this advertising. This ad up here, you can't see the top of it. It says something to the effect of something alien to the world of taste, and it says Pringles. It's an ad for Pringles potato chips. I'll get to the next one. Crop circles are not new. Shakespeare actually wrote about them. We've heard these terms before earlier in the day. Fairy rings and the curse of the mowing devil. This is a woodblock from 1676, and it just tells you that there's historical notation that crop circles have been happening for quite a long time. They're not new. People think they're a relatively new phenomenon. How many people in the audience have ever been in a crop circle? Just a few. Here in the United States or in England?
In Canada.
In Canada. Very good. Yes, because they're happening in Canada as well as all across the United States and England. They're actually happening all over the world. I hope to impart to you very, very briefly that this is a phenomenon that you can walk into. It's an absolutely beautiful and mystifying experience. Also, I hope to impart to you that people who research crop circles get all the same ridicule that people who research UFOs. There's a lot of social ridicule. And often in UFO research, there's not trace elements that you can investigate. In some cases there are, but they're far and few between. Whereas in crop circle research, almost 100% of the evidence is in fact its trace evidence. And you can walk right in and look at them. My first, this is just to give you an impression of the beauty and the mystery that overwhelms you when you walk into your first formation. First of all, you have no idea what you're in terms of what the graphic looks like on the ground. Although this formation is not this one. You can have something like this what this looks like from the air, but this is what it looks like on the ground, and you're absolutely mystified. You will find very complicated things like nesting, twisting, balling. I have a couple of examples of this for you. This looks like the water flow went right through here. If you're actually hoaxing a formation with boards and wood, you would not be able to create that. So my first trip to England was to study crop circles, was an interesting journey, and a lot of things happened for me. My husband, who has a friend who owns a factory in England, he called him and said, my wife's going to be transferring through private property in England. If she gets arrested, will you go bail her out? And he, of course, said, sure, no problem, I'll be on top of it. And that day in the newspaper, this appeared, and he read the article. And he thought, I have to send this to the States. I have to send this to Jennifer. So he sends me this newspaper article, and I think to myself, oh my gosh, I've got to get into that formation. Well, I'm on a trip with 35 people, and I think to myself, there's no way I'm going to be able to direct this big group where I want to go. I mean, I can try, but I made this silent little wish in prayer, and I said, oh, I wish I was going just by myself with a guide, and I could just get into the formations I wanted to. I could bring my video camera, I could film some of the research, and I could really get to the bottom of this. Well, the day before the trip, Ruben Uriarte calls me. He's leading the trip for a group called Beyond Boundaries. He happens to be the state director for MUFON in Northern California. He's also on the board and an international member of MUFON as well because he's Spanish speaking. Well, I learned that most of the people on the trip were coming with Jaime Maussan, who some of you may know. He's a television personality in Mexico and has a regular weekly show there, and he was bringing the whole group, and it was a Spanish-speaking trip, and I didn't even know. Well, Jaime Maussan canceled, so Ruben called me the day before and said, basically, the other people who were going on the trip also canceled out, and it was just going to be me and him, and did I still want to go? I said, are you kidding? My mouth was on the floor. I said, of course. So one of the first things I wanted to do was meet some of the top researchers, and since I was going with Ruben alone, and we were there in August where many of the researchers are there, I thought, well, this is going to be possible maybe. So I get to England and I tell Ruben, as we're driving down a farm trail in our little car, and another car is coming towards us, I'm ripping the newspaper article out of my backpack saying, this is what I want to do. I'd really love to get to this grid, and I'd really love to be able to investigate it with a really great researcher. I'd love to meet Nancy Talbot. Well, as we get to the point where our two cars have to pass, because it's a one-lane tractor trail, a car stops and rolls down the window, and it's Nancy Talbot right here, and she says to Ruben, hi Ruben, I want to go to the grid tomorrow. Can you and your friend come out and help me? For those of you who don't know, Nancy was originally a music producer, so she studied sound, and she's very interested in sound vibrations as well. But she also has a big research background from the University of Maryland and also from Harvard. She became interested in crop circle research in the early 90s, and she met a New York businessman who had a background in geomagnetics and electromagnetics named John Burke. And she and he started to research crop circles and then decided to join forces with a man named Dr. Levengood, who was in the Midwest and created a lab in his home to research the crops. And they formed what is known as BLT research. So this is going into the formation to research it. We show up into this field in the morning, and there are two formations in the field, not one. Now, this is very interesting to me. I find out from Nancy, after she gets permission from the farmer, that a gay couple was getting married, and they asked permission, paid the farmer to allow themselves to make the heart to get married on. They made it on Thursday. They showed up on Saturday to get married, and this was in the field, and it wasn't there Friday night at dusk, at sundown. And the farmer was furious and said, I gave you permission to make one formation, not two. They finally convinced him they had nothing to do with making this formation, and he let them get married. This grid was an extremely complicated photo. I know it's a little dark to see up here, but not only were there 60 clumps on each side going all around, but there was a small subtle circle around the outside, which you may be able to see here in the aerial photograph. And in some of my photographs you'll see next, you'll be able to see that on the ground. That has to do, you can see it a little bit here too, that has to do with the way that the grass or the wheat was laid. This was a highly complex formation. This is this is an aerial or on-the-ground photo, just to give you a sense of the absolute beauty and awe of this formation. It just stunned me to walk through it. And when you're in the middle of it, it's absolutely like a maze. You have no idea what you're in. It's as if you're in some large weaving of some sort, and you're walking around in it, and you're a little tiny ant. It gives you this incredible perspective on yourself and your life and your own insignificance. And of course, you're out in nature, and you're meeting people also walking around in awe and fascinated from all walks of life and from all over the world. This is a little video clip. This is Nancy Talbot getting permission from the farmer to allow us to go into the field. And when we go in, that's Ruben Uriarte and Dan Loeb there, and we dig up the samples right from the roots. As you can see, we're pulling them out. We roll them up into paper and mark them, Control 1, Control 2, Control 3. We also dig up soil samples that correlate with that crop sample, and that's what Ruben's doing with a shovel. He puts that dirt into a bag. That's an expulsion cavity, which I'm going to explain to you shortly later. And at the end of the day, there are all these bundles lying through the field, in the field and outside of the field. That's me at about 7:30 at night, picking up all these bundles. The soil bundles I had to run through my belt because I couldn't carry them all, so I unhooked my belt, slid them through, and then I picked up all the bundles in my arms. It's long, arduous work out in the hot sun all day, but that's the only way you really can get the crops and soil back to the lab to examine them. So I came home from that trip and decided I was going to join ICCRA, and a good bit of this presentation I'm sharing with you about formations in the United States is partly due to the research that Jeff Wilson has done. He's sitting right here with his wife Delcy. He formed the ICCRA. It stands for the International Crop Circle Research Association. Linda Howe is also pictured right here. This is Suzanne Taylor. She's done a film on crop circles. This is me right here. He holds conferences in Ohio near Serpent Mound. This year it was in, I believe, Indiana. They're excellent conferences to go to learn how to research crop circles. Jeff Wilson was also responsible for writing for the MUFON Journal the procedures and protocols to investigate crop circles. So I'm not going to read through all this, but I'll just point out some. If you find formations, I know that they're happening out in this neck of the woods because you've got a lot of ancient mounds right between the southern tip of Ohio here, West Virginia, and this southwestern corner of Pennsylvania. So if you find one, please by all means pick up my card and let me know about them. Also, I just wanted to tell you down here next to the projector, I have a resource handout for all sorts of information if you're interested in researching more about crop circles. Films, websites, books, all sorts of topics, so please feel free to pick one up. So these are just, this is pictures of electronic field readers. These are little measuring devices that give you a digital readout, which is very important if you have a very small, if you're measuring small incremental differences in sizes of nodes and things like that. Compasses. This is another picture of some of the things you want to bring in. A magnet is very important, and most of you probably have that in your toolbox at home. Tape measure. Digital cameras and analog cameras, because they record differently, different anomalies. Sometimes a digital camera, if it's a video camera, it can go to black and white under electronic field disturbances or under some sort of electromagnetic radiation coming off the crop. And an analog camera will just stop or just go dead. Also a GPS and a little tape recorder to record your immediate impressions. So this is just a quick guide of some of the formations that have happened around the United States from 1880 through to 2008. So they're scattered all across the United States. A lot of people think they're not even happening here. This one is a slide to sort of show you the correlation between 1883, when some of the newspaper articles go back to all the way up to 2008 or 6. I'm not sure which this one is. I think it's 2008. There may be, everyone points this out, seems to be a spike right around 1986 86 to 88. It may have to do with the internet and the ability for us to communicate information about crop circles, so they're reported more. We really don't know if more are happening during that period of time. I'm doubtful if they more have. This is just a correlation to show you that crop circles in the back column here, this is what we consider to be traditional crop circles, or formations that occur seemingly overnight, in seconds, have electromagnetic features to them, and have all sorts of characteristics, which I'm going to be showing you. Things like expulsion cavities and elongated nodes, and little bits of iron, magnetized balls of iron in the soil. The next formation in here is hoaxed, or man-made, that we know are man-made. This green column here of cones is very significant, and most people don't even look at these when they study crop circle research. They're known as randomly downed crop. You'll often be driving down the highway, look into a field, see a lot of crop that's down. If you bother to stop your car and go in there, you may find that there are areas of what they call spirals, where obviously some energies hit the crop seems to be spiraled out. Although it seems random in a large area, you will find blown nodes and expulsion cavities in those little spirets inside the randomly down crop. So they're important to also look at, because there may be a correlation between energies that create randomly down crop and those that create formations. This is a correlation just from all the states where crop circles are reported across the United States, Ohio, and I think it ends at New Mexico. I break this down for you in the next slide here just to show you the top 13 states in the United States. And notice Pennsylvania is 10th right here. So Pennsylvania has quite a lot of formations happening in it. Ohio seems to be the top. Now, these are just some of the formations which has happened right here in Pennsylvania. I'm going to jump through these pretty quickly. There was one in, of course, I can't completely see the screen from here. I think it says Greensburg, Slavington, and Evansburg. You can read these. They're just mostly round, flat circles, 72, 75, 89. So these are reported through here. This was in Finleyville in Washington County in 1990, Chicora in Butler County in 1995. You get to see what these look like. These were fairly large circles. You can see each of these circles was 33 feet. So the whole formation was roughly, almost 85 feet long. This was a formation which happened in Limerick County, right near where I am, in my neck of the woods. And this was a randomly downed area of crop. It was about 12 feet in diameter, although it wasn't round. And in the middle of this big area of randomly downed crop, there were 3 circles that were 5 feet in diameter. Now, Bruce Rideout, who's from a local science college there called Ursinus College, he investigated this with Linda Howe. They dug up soil samples, they sent them off to Dr. Levengood, and it was clear that there was some of the typical anomalies we're used to, what we call lateral node bending in the soil, increased cell wall pits, expulsion cavities, and also changes in the way the seeds from this wheat crop would germinate into a lab. So I'm going to show you more about these types of formations. This is an example of what we call bent crop, where the crop is literally bent over, coming right out of the ground. And this crop at the top is called oilseed rape. It's what you make canola oil out of. This crop is extremely brittle. If any of you were farmers or have ever grown asparagus, you know what that's like when it's ready. You just snap it off and break it off and it snaps in your fingers. Oilseed rape is very much like that. So there's no way you can bend this crop, especially when it's mature. It will snap right at the base. These are examples of nodes which show some sort of change or some sort of damage. They're slightly elongated and they are bent. These could be caused by something called phototropism, where if a plant is knocked over, say by a high wind, it will attempt to reorient itself to the crop. Or if it's bent, somebody steps on the base at the bottom and it's not dead, it will attempt to reorient itself. So unless you can really fully examine all the crop, you can't make a determination until you kind of go in with an electric field reader and you start to measure the nodes and things to know what actually happened in this field. This is an example of really extremely elongated nodes that actually also show some necrosis on the surface, where the fluid of the plant sort of eases out of the node as the node bends and falls over, and a fungus grows on it, which is darkening it. This is oilseed rape here. These are pictures actually from Germany because I didn't have broken oilseed rape from the States to show you. But you can see if you walk in the field, you will completely damage those plants. Oilseed rape also has very delicate flowers on top of it that completely come off if you're trying to hoax a formation in that type of a crop. This is Nancy Talbot. She's the researcher I mentioned earlier. It's a little film clip, and she discusses doing the research in this formation, which happened in Salem, Oregon in 1977. And hopefully we have some.
Right, this is a case in Salem, Oregon.
Can you hear
in
it?
1997 on the West Coast. We found node length changes in the plants in this formation, and we also found a massive incidence of expulsion cavities. The controls in this case were taken away from the formation in this direction and away from the formation in that direction, out to the standing crop. What we discovered was that we had significant node length changes inside the formation, and we had these expulsion cavities. But what we also found in the standing crop outside the formation, the supposedly unaffected crop, we found node length changes which decreased as a function of distance away from the edge, and in a completely linear fashion. Those are the controls taken north and south. The node lengths are decreasing the farther you get away in the standing crop.
So I wanted to just review and refresh with you before we move on. One of the things you saw in that little video clip was this type of graphic known as the Beard-Lambert principle. This is a principle where you can notice that you're dealing with something significant. The data that you're looking at is statistically significant, and it's based on a law in physics called the Beard-Lambert principle on the man who invented this. Here, what we're actually looking at is the crop's ability to absorb electromagnetic energy in the plants. The node lengths have actually increased the greatest in the center of the circle, and they decrease. The node lengths sort of get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller as you move out towards the periphery of the edge of the formation. So whatever energies was involved in affecting this crop, some sort of high-intensity plasma or electromagnetic energy that heats up the steam inside the plant, almost like a microwave would, it forces the liquid inside the plant to become steam. The steam needs to escape. It goes towards the node, which is the softest area of the plant, and also the area of the plant that has the most amount of water. It blows a hole in the side of the node often, or it just weakens the plant and makes the plant fall over if it's most affected at its base. And then the node completely stretches out, elongates, or just completely blows out, and then you have necrosis happening. Many people look at this and say the plant was scorched. It's not actually scorched, it's a fungus growing on the plant's surface. This formation happened in Arkansas. It was in wheat in 2007 on June 14. Notice that there are no tram lines in this field. So if somebody was walking into the field and trying to host this formation, they would leave a footprint just like you would in fresh snow. The home where this formation happened was less than 200 yards away. In fact, the family took this picture from their bedroom window. They saw it when they woke up in the morning. This formation, the owners of the home had a dog, and the dog seemed to really go a little bit crazy about 4 o'clock in the morning. And this formation showed positive for what we call the L-NEAT test, and I'll explain to you what that is next. L-NEAT stands for based on Dr. Levengood, the Levengood Node Elongation Analysis Test. It's just an acronym that Jeff Wilson came up with. But it's a quick way for researchers to go into a field with a node, with a little measuring device, and once you start measuring nodes and they're longer than your controls in your standing crop that's not been affected by the formation, you know you have something significant going on. It's one of those really quick tests you can do. Here you can see the control is about 4 centimeters, and inside the formation where this sample was taken, where the crop is laid down, it was about 8 to 10 centimeters, depending on how you want to measure that. This is a formation which happened in, well actually it's randomly downed crop, which is why I'm showing this to you. This is what RDFs look like. Ben Keyes actually saw this crop fall down the night before. It was in the middle of a rainstorm. He saw a flashing, tumbling ball of light and several blue pulses of light in the wheat field. And the next morning, he found this large area of randomly down crop. He went out to investigate it, and he noticed that this deer would not go into the field, so there was some animal disturbances going on. He also found in spirals in the middle some elongated nodes. And when he brought his camera out and he took pictures, he got all these light orbs showing up on his picture. So light orbs seem to be another odd phenomenon we don't completely understand connected to crop circle. Whoops, crop circle research, I jumped ahead. Now, on July 4th in 2003, Art Rantala, this gentleman here, had sat down on his porch to watch a storm come through, and all of a sudden he looked across the road. This is a little corner of the road. His farm was sort of like over here, looking across the road towards this crop. He all of a sudden started to see this crop just start to wiggle, and then all of a sudden 3 of these circles fell down. Each one, he said, took about 15 seconds. There was no whirlwind. He saw no ball of lights. There was a weather front moving through, but it hadn't gotten very dramatic yet. He went out into it the next day and created this footpath, because this farm also had no tram lines. And he immediately realized something unusual had gone on and reported it, I think, to maybe even Peter Davenport, who then called Jeff Wilson, and Jeff Wilson went out to investigate it. Can you see the top of the seed head here? This is called the apical node. It's the top node of the crop. This seed head normally sits right down on the top of the crop, but in this case, it is pushed up, spiraled around. So there's something very unusual going on in this. Jeff went out and found that it was LNE positive for node elongation. And he also found, let's see if I can show you, that the soil was magnetic. Here are some of the expulsion cavities that took place in that field. And he also found little tiny iron balls in the soil that were magnetic. And in fact, that's what's causing the soil to stick to this. That's a photograph taken under a microscope. Now, while he's investigating this very same formation that Ben Keyes saw happen, he noticed that he was followed as he got to this formation to investigate it. Then the fellow who was in the car after about a half hour finally came into the field and talked to Jeff, and he was wearing Army uniform. He was from Scott Air Force Base, and he was asking Jeff Wilson all these questions. Why are you investigating it? What have you found? What do you think? And Jeff wanted to ask him some questions, which he wasn't too helpful to answer. But while he's there, a black helicopter flies over. Now you see this all the time in England. There's evidence that the military studies these things, they photograph them, they're trying to also understand what's going on. They may even see them on their weather patterns somehow before they're formed. We're not quite sure. But what Jeff noticed when he got home after he photographed that helicopter is that helicopter was most likely interacting with a ball of light, which he didn't even see at the time because he was focused on looking at the ground and studying the crop. But we see helicopters interacting with balls of light in the air as well in England. This was a formation in Hensel, Ontario. I got to go in this one because I go to the Shakespeare Festival all the time in Stratford. And many formations happen up and around that area. Hensel is about 40 minutes or so, or maybe 35 minutes from Stratford. So this formation happened, and This is one of Jeff's photos, aerial photos from this. And Jeff points out that 95% of formations have a lot of similar characteristics. The ones that we think that are made by some anomalous energy. They tend to happen near power lines. They tend to happen near water, or a creek, or a pond, or a drainage ditch, or there may be an underground aqueduct there we don't know about. They tend to happen on the downhill slope of a crop, or at the lowest part of the field, closest to possibly a water source. And 65% of them have been found to be pointing towards or be near an ancient mound of some sort. Now, in this particular field, right here, here, and here the farmer has had to move around power lines. You can't see them very well the way the photo shows up here. This is, of course, the drainage ditch. Crop has run off here, being carried away by rainwater before it had a chance to germinate, most likely. So this is a drainage ditch through here. And this particular pole happens to have a transformer box on it. And that seems to be maybe a correlation, something with the static electricity, we think. We're not quite sure why formations tend to happen in fields where there are power lines, but you will see this often. Now, this is a formation that happened in British Columbia. I'm showing this to you so you realize that not all formations have geometries. This is just square. This was in a cornfield. The crops were all flattened in one direction, and there were expulsion cavities in that field from the crop that was lying down. This was from some of the corn that was lying down. Do you see that little expulsion cavity? That crop was not lying down. That was on the outskirts of this formation in the standing crop. So standing crop can also be affected by energies that create crop circles. And if someone is hoaxing that with a board, I'm really interested in how they did it. One of the other unusual anomalies you see all the time is animals killed, cooked, melted. You can see flies, mosquitoes stuck to crop. In this case, in Saskatchewan, this was a grasshopper that was melted right over the crop. And if you're not going slowly, you'll miss things like this. This formation happened in Ohio in 2003. It's in soybeans. It was in Locust Grove. And Jeff Wilson investigated this formation. And I turned it around because it really is a significant geometry, similar to formations that we see in England a lot. And in fact, there are a lot of geometric analyses done on this to connect it with other formations that have happened in England. It was aligned with an ancient earthwork called Serpent Mound. It happened right alongside a creek. There were geological faults nearby, and it happened during rain and power outages. A very heavy rain, in fact. The field was very wet. You can see here the formation in relation to Painted Creek. Just to give you a perspective on size, this is a road, and these are 3 cars on the road. So you can imagine if you started to take cars and line them up in there, how significantly large that formation is. This is another aerial photograph of the formation, and I wanted to show this to you so you could have a perspective on where it is aligned with Serpent Mound. Serpent Mound is literally like a snake. It goes in the soil, or it's actually a mound about 10 feet high in the shape of a snake. I have another better picture of it for you here that was created by an artist so that you can understand. It's a fabulous ancient site. I highly recommend you go there. As soon as you get there, you know something is up. It's absolutely beautiful, and you feel different while you're there. You definitely know you're standing on some sort of a fault and something very ancient. Jeff Wilson found out that each of the different bends in the serpent's body line up with moon alignments that was previously unknown until Jeff Wilson became involved in crop circle research and ancient mounds. Jeff was also involved in funding money to keep Serpent Mound open and raising money for it. He's trying to get it as one of the national heritages that's protected in our country. People don't know when this was built or who built it. A lot of Native Americans did not claim that they built the ancient mounds that were scattered across this country, but they honored them, they worshipped them, they buried some of their dead in them sometimes, and they buried lots of artifacts in them. Some people believe a very ancient society built this, and this one is in relation to Draco because it faces it on the solstice. This Adams Grove formation, which was soybeans, had expulsion cavities that looked like this, very different than what you see in, say, wheat or corn. And what you're seeing here is necrosis from the fluid of the plant coming out and little bugs showing up to eat it and fungus growing. The red lines you see here on top of the crop, we're not exactly sure why that's caused. Dr. Levengood believes it's anthracene. He thinks that it's something similar to the effect that leaves undergo in the fall when they change color. But we're not quite sure why only the tops of the plants turn red when the sun comes up. And it has something to do with some of the plant fluid which was expelled on them. This is a cross-section of the nodes of that soybean crop, and you can see the effect and the damage. The soybean is kind of thick, and the fluid is maybe thicker than it is inside corn or wheat. And so part of the node is not gone, but just the top side is. Now, people say that formations only happen inside large fields or crops, and why is that? I'm showing you this to show you that this formation happened in someone's backyard in their garden patch. It's just randomly downed crop. It looks like Jeff Wilson went in and examined it and found that it had high levels of electrofield strength in it, and it gave off high microwave emissions. And he also took some of the soil, or some of the fluid from some of this is corn. He examined some of the fluid under a microscope, and the downed crop had what they called growth node cells that were much larger, 40% larger than some of the fluid from the crops that were standing. So something's happening on a cellular level that's really expanding this fluid. This was a formation in Arkansas, in Peach Orchard, and this particular researcher, Joanne Scarpolini, went in and found this bird's nest that was just not destroyed, just completely folded over in the formation. Earlier visitors there claimed that they took eggs completely undamaged out of the crop, or out of this formation. What most people don't often realize is sometimes, and often cases, those eggs show signs of being somewhat hard cooked. You know, if you take an egg and you don't crack it and you put it in the microwave, it explodes. What's happening? They can take little tiny robin's nest eggs, hit them with little bits of energy, partially cook them, and we really don't understand that. This was a very large pinwheel, no tram lines in the field. If there was a footprint or someone walking in here, we would have been able to see that. Now this formation really is real key, and I want you to pay close attention to it. This was not downed crop. This is actually standing crop that grew shorter than the rest of the crop outside of the formation. This walking path was made by the farmer who went in to investigate it. He discovered this in his crop. This was in Louisiana in a place called Poverty Point. This farmer had he didn't spray his crop at all. He was an organic farmer. And he called the local television station to figure out what could have possibly happened to his crop. And they decided to call out, whoops, I'm going to back up for a second. They decided to call out a professor from the local agricultural university, from Louisiana State University. Professor Bagwell came out, and he walked through it. He made this footpath with the farmer, and he said, well, obviously this is some very elaborate hoax. Someone came into the field and sprayed these areas with seed inhibitor prior to the crop being fully mature. It had germinated, but it hadn't really started to kick off and start to grow, and they sprayed seed inhibitor in it, or crop inhibitor, and it grew, but it just grew in a smaller level. Now, keep in mind, there were over 25 circles, each about 10 to 12, sometimes 15 feet in diameter. This whole thing covered over a quarter of a mile wide. You would think they would have destroyed some of the crop by getting in here and spraying, but you don't see any evidence of that or any footpath at all. There was no crop sampling done in order to make that determination, but it was reported as fact on the local television. Next, we're going to see Professor Levengood. he created a lab in his home to investigate what we're finding in the crops. And this is a little film clip with Nancy Talbot, who's going to shortly start to discuss Levengood's
And
work.
what Levengood documented beautifully, and I would guess tediously for many, many years, were the basic changes in the plants. One of the things that he discovered was that the seeds taken from crossover plants grew totally differently than the controls. What this is a bunch of seeds taken from a formation and a bunch of seeds in the controls in a lab tray. And he's germinating. He has a germination chamber. It's calibrated to a certain temperature, a certain amount of moisture, et cetera, et cetera. If the crop was young and immature, the seed was not fully formed when the crossover occurred. The seedling was depressed. The seedling's energies. Often they wouldn't germinate, and if they did germinate, not strongly enough to be viable. However, in a mature crop, where the seed was already formed when the energies hit, then you got exactly the opposite. You got increased protein yield.
This discovery of Dr. Levengood's astonished him so, not just this particular formation, but other crop circle research he did, that he and John Burke actually, in order to understand what was going on in the fields, they created the ability to hit plants with like microwave energy and then examine what happened to the crops. And they discovered that seeds hit when they're more mature have higher ability to undergo stresses, weather changes, infestations of different types of animals and diseases. So they actually patented something called MIR, stress guard, in 1998, which is quite a while ago. And this was to hit seeds with a certain amount of electromagnetic radiation to make them much more durable, because they would germinate faster, plants would grow greater, and they discovered that this affected the crops through 7 generations of crop. Other people have done research taking seeds out of formations, and they find that crops have increased yield for 7 generations if they've been inside a formation. So obviously, Dr. Levengood's work would have been significant to answer the question of what happened in this field in East Mississippi. It most likely got hit by some sort of energy prior to the crop being, very high. And where the energies hit, the formation is still shown in the crop when it grows. Now, this area in East Mississippi where this formation happened, of course, it had a tower in the field. I didn't point that out to you. And it was at the lowest point of the field as well. That happened to be right near an ancient mound. And I want to just talk very briefly, so we're going to have a few slides about ancient mounds. This is the river that runs through East Mississippi, and this is the ancient mound that's right near there, these series of circular rings. It looks an awful lot like a crop circle, doesn't it? I was stunned when I saw this. This is what's left of it today. There's only a quarter section of it left. It originally came down here and down there. And this line through here is the river that you can see from the air. It's one of the oldest mounds in the United States. Some people have dated it back to 9,000 years BC, because they dug up and they did carbon datings on little figurines they got there. The most general and most accepted dating is 1670 BC. This is a formation in Miamisburg. It's in corn. It's an aerial shot of it. This is a close-up shot of it. This also had LNE positive for node elongations at the base of the plant. The soil was very, very dry. It's another thing that you know when you walk into a field and there's been a heavy rainstorm and there's mud on your shoes, and you get into the formation and the soil is dry, like drywall, like you can't stick your knuckle in it, you know something unusual has happened. And often, if you drag a magnet across the soil, you'll realize that the dirt sticks to your magnet. And if you go out and do that outside, you won't find that in most cases. Now, this is the Miamisburg mound that this formation happened near. People think that there's no correlation between whoever built ancient mounds in this country and ancient mounds in other parts of the world, and I tend to think we're on the verge of a bigger discovery, and we're going to link ancient history on our planet in a way we haven't before. This mound has about 116 steps up one side of it. Here I show you Silbury Hill, which was in the background of the grid that I got to investigate, and this is Miamisburg Mound. Looking at them from the side, they both have stairs up the top, they both have a flat conical peak. This mound was actually dug apart and researched and then put back together, so it's probably not in the same shape it originally was. I just wanted to show you this information so you have a way to compare ancient mounds, because formations in England, certainly, we know are happening in correlations in relations to ancient mounds. Here's Miamisburg Mound and Silbury Hill compared. If you were looking at them from the air, you could easily mistake them for the same mound. Let's jump to the next picture. These are other types of mounds. This is the town of Avebury in Wiltshire. 10 minutes, thank you. Okay. I've got about 20 on my watch for an hour, but that's okay. We'll jump through this as fast as we can. This is Avebury. This is the circle around Stonehenge. This is an incredible circle. Look at how big this is. This is in Newark, and this is also in Newark. I tend to think there might be a correlation maybe between ancient mounds and crop circles. Maybe ancient civilization witnessed crop circles and they built mounds around them. I really don't know, but how could an ancient civilization, this is 25 acres inside that circle. And the hill around here is 10 feet high and the gully is 10 feet deep that's next to it. They're really incredible. If you haven't been to them, I encourage you to investigate them. These are the types of shell displays that Native American Indians painted on shells and buried inside these mounds. Is there a correlation between crop circle design? I don't know, but I have to tell you it gets my attention. Formations seem to be happening in other things as well besides crop. This is the dry riverbed of the Rio Grande, taken by someone who lived right on it. This was not there the day before. It showed high levels of radioactive energy the next day. Electromagnetic energy. This is an ice ring found by a farmer. That's a formation I took a picture of in England, but you can see the correlation going on here. These are ice rings that are from Norway and Russia. This guy is a farmer, a fish farmer, and he goes out and fishes through the ice. These are just in forests. Is what's causing these the same thing that's causing formations? I ask. I'm not certain. These pictures were sent to me by Janet Ossenbard. She lives in Holland. She found trees all bent over into the center in the forest in Holland. I've heard of things like this. These were not young saplings. They weren't fully mature trees. They weren't huge. But is an energy that's involved in making those, involved in making crop circles? Another major phenomenon are balls of light. We find these all the time. This is Steve Alexander's film footage. And these are pictures, some of Nancy Talbot's pictures. This is from the United States. This is from Holland. This is in England. I got to speak to the farmer who was on that tractor. He said this was from near the Barbary Castle formation. When this ball of light moved over his tractor, his engine stopped. And he heard the static electricity above him, and he stopped, and he looked up, and his hair was standing up on end. We really don't know what is causing these balls of light, but the balls of light are often shown or seen with formations. This is very dark and very hard for you to see. It's a very controversial piece of film. Some people think it's one of the first crop circles being caught on film. I cannot verify the film footage for you as to whether or not it's authentic or not, but it was given to me by a good friend who believed that it was. So what causes all these possible strange things happening in the crops? Elongated nodes, expulsion cavities, magnetic iron sinus balls found in the soil. We're going to try to answer some of these questions really quickly. Of course, the first answer everyone comes up with, they're on the two extremes. It's ETs or it's hoaxers. And I don't think either one of those serve us very well. We have to kind of look at the facts.
And both Burke and Levengood, as far as I know to this day, are pretty much committed to the idea that the causative agency is an ionospheric plasma, and the plasma is generated in the ionosphere, and then descends to the Earth's surface, goes to certain locations for whatever reason, the aquifer connection, the magnet, some sort of magnetic anomaly or whatever, and leaves these impressions in the crop as a result. And it may be that many things which have historically been thought of as supernatural are, in fact, part of the natural world that occur only randomly or only occasionally or under certain circumstances, and that they're actually just part of the natural environment that nobody's bothered to study very much and doesn't understand yet. The thing with science, the beauty of it is, if you get a piece of information that doesn't fit, you have to go back to square one. You build another theory. You follow the data. You don't come up with an idea to make things fit. You see what's actually there.
Now I have about 10 more slides, and I'm going to try to explain to you what an ionospheric plasma is. Okay? A plasma is really simply just electrified air. Here is a laboratory-generated sample of a plasma. It's about 100 gigawatts. It's a beam, and it's focused down through a narrow waist, which you can see above this blue notebook. You see that little floating dot? It looks just like orbs we see in the field all the time. And then as that beam expands against the wall, you're seeing this electrified, glowing ionospheric plasma, basically. Actually, it's a plasma in a lab, not caused by the ionosphere. It carries electric charge, and when it travels through the magnetic field lines of our Earth, it spirals naturally and it emits electrons. I've tried to kind of create a model here for you that I took off the web. And our Earth has these electromagnetic field lines. So plasmas can exist in thunderheads, and they can be attracted to opposite charges in the ground, like you would find in an underground aqueduct. Let's see if I can get this to jump to the next slide. Came up? Oh, okay, I'm sorry, this is the next slide. No, I've already showed you that. I might need somebody to advance the slide for me, because it just, there we
It's
go.
something like 93 to 98% of the formations do in fact occur over this chalk and or green sand aquifer. As the summer comes on and there's less and less moisture and rain, the aquifer recedes. And as it does, it sinks down lower. As the edges of it recede, you get a strong electric charge set up in the ground, because the water percolating through the chalk creates this charge. As the summer goes along, you see the charge increases. The lower the aquifer is, the farther the water has to travel through the chalk, the greater the electrical charge. The numbers of crop circles cluster along the edges of the aquifer also.
Now, how does this relate to ionospheric plasmas? We know that solar flares increase free electrons in the upper magnetosphere, and that's the highest level of our Earth's atmosphere. This could contribute to the formation of ionospheric plasmas. The frequency of crop formations tends to correlate, in England, we know, roughly parallel with increased solar flare or sunspot activity. Ionizing X-rays from solar flares penetrate. Do I have my little text here popping up? There we go, so you can read along with me. Ionizing X-rays from solar flares tend to penetrate partway into our magnetosphere, which is this upper layer right here. But they're normally bounced back by the reflective layer of the Earth's atmosphere, and they can't penetrate down into the ionosphere. But at nighttime, the reflective power of the upper ionosphere recedes, and the lower atmosphere down here tends to expand up. Now, most of us know about this phenomenon because this less dense and weaker nighttime atmospheric layer is what allows AM radios to bounce further across the horizon at night and improve nighttime communication. But it's important to know that the reflective layer, there's another one here, the reflective power of the Earth's atmosphere is weakest in the pre-dawn hours, and that's when most of your crop formations are happening. So there's a dynamic taking place here with the Earth's atmosphere. This is from some physics journals, which I have down here for you if you want more information about that. Now, some more models for you. The ionizing X-rays naturally are going to spiral around the Earth's geomagnetic field lines as they come into our Earth's atmosphere. And this could contribute to creating a plasma. A plasma's ability to penetrate the ionosphere is really directly related to its strength. The tighter and more rapidly spinning this plasma vortex is, the further it can penetrate towards the ground. Now we know that increased free electrons that are present after a solar flare can further excite the magnetism of this plasma and make it spin faster. So these many, many influences can contribute to a very dynamic thing happening. As the plasma shrinks in size, it spins faster and faster, much like you see an ice skater when they accelerate their arms and they go into the final spin. It's going to spin faster as it gets tighter into this vortex. Now, as it's doing that, the plasma also picks up greater magnetism. There we go. Attracting iron particles that are naturally in the atmosphere from meteorites, which come into our atmosphere and burn up, and as they do, they throw out all this little magnetite dust, and a plasma is going to attract that magnetite dust to it. Now the plasma is also getting hot because it's spinning off free electrons like a microwave does. So it's also heating up this iron and making it molten. So you have many influences contributing here to a very dynamic and complex thing, making this plasma probably kind of molten and electromagnetic and attracting particles with it. So these magnetic iron bubbles that are in this plasma, we find inside crop circles there's 20 to 100 times greater concentration of magnetite in the soil samples than found outside the crop circles or in normal soil. This material is identical to the debris that arose from meteorites as they burn up in the atmosphere and settle to the ground slowly under normal conditions. The downburst of this hot plasma on the plant sort of mimics the effect of microwave radiation. The plant stem nodes, which hold the majority of the plant's water, is the area that's most affected. And the plant fluid heats up rapidly, as I mentioned before. It turns to steam. It weakens the plant, most often where the plant is being held most, at its strongest node at the base, and makes the plant fall over. But what could be causing the geometries that we're seeing in the fields? Let me play this little film clip here for you.
You can't see a lot of these with the naked eye, but the fact that they're perfectly spherical indicates they were in a molten state as they fell to Earth, because that's how you get the spheres. We used to make lead shot that way, right? Revolutionary War, we heated the lead up, we dropped it on towers, because it forms spheres. He also discovered magnetic particles in soils that are very unusual.
This is a little film clip from Hans Jenning. He was a doctor who discovered that with sound waves, he could affect pain levels in people's bodies. So he wanted to understand this more, and he started to put sound waves through all sorts of different types of material, like talcum powder. This happens to be iron filings that he has a sound wave moving through. And as you can see, they literally move around by the effect of the sound wave alone. Now, if you have heat, if you have electromagnetic energy, if you have a microwave happening of some sort affecting these, you may create a very interesting dynamic inside a plasma vortex. That's a side angle, looking at these little iron filings moving. It looks like Genghis Khan's army marching, doesn't it? I tried to create some visuals for you so you can understand that this is kind of complex for us to really understand. But until you really look at the science behind it and what we know about plasmas, you can't make a quick decision about what's forming crop circles. I've tried to give you some more samples here. Plasmas behave like an electromagnetic fluid, and hence they are actually called in scientific journals magnetic hydrodynamic. Plasmas behave, this is another film here by Dr. Jennings, and this happens to be talcum powder, and it's spinning on top of a speaker drum. Now, as he changes the sound pattern, you see an interference going on in the formation of the talcum powder, and then the spiral spins in the opposite direction, just by the change in the sound wave. So again, if we're looking at a much more dynamic wave, some sort of electromagnetic wave rather than a sound wave, you can understand that there's something dynamic happening. This lower picture that you were watching here was just water on a drum, and it was filmed with a Super 8 camera many years ago. So we can't replicate a large-scale magnetic hydrodynamic plasma in a laboratory setting, but hopefully these models have shown you that powders, things like talcum powders, can take on a three-dimensional shape. Now to further that, I've tried to give you some more models. The magnetic hydrodynamic quality of a plasma could resemble this computer model. As you can see, it's growing in complexity as it gets larger, and it has sharp angles, and it's sort of like a growing tetrahedron that goes to an icosahedron and a dodecahedron. We know that plasmas can form triangles, hexagons, and other three-dimensional platonic solid shapes depending on the unique atmospheric conditions at the time when they develop. This video model at the bottom is just ball lightning. I've put it in here to show you the force that it carries as it's jumping around on a laboratory floor. I think this is my next and last slide. This is a very interesting video taken inside a formation in England this summer by a good friend of mine named Gary King. As you can see, this is a very complex weaving in the center of this formation. It looks like a dodecahedron if you study platonic shapes and you know what that looks like. It's possible that a crop circle can be a two-dimensional, or actually in this case, a three-dimensional residue, and many times they look three-dimensional from the air, of an electromagnetic plasma shape that impacts the Earth's surface as it neutralizes its force as it hits the ground and dispels its force onto the crop. So I know we're under a time constraint. This is basically all I have for you. I think my screen, of course, is being blocked. Do you want to hit the next slide there for me? Yeah, because it's blocking the thing. Let's see. Basically, everyone says, are these some sort of message? That's another lecture that we don't have time to get into. I'm happy to answer a couple of questions as you would like. If we have time for that, it's up to John. Yes?
I think I heard more about crop circles than I thought I would, but it's very interesting, and I do buy this idea of these electromagnetic fields and ionic fields working. I think it's really good. But let me give you another perspective. You talked about controls being these crop circles that were already found, and that consisted of comparing some of these nodes with other nodes outside the circle. However, let's look at an example. If I had something that was a mystery and maybe that I wanted to protect or see how it happened, let's say I had a warehouse full of gold and diamonds, and I wanted to make sure that that was protected. And I put some security guards there, some X-ray vision cameras, and some infrared cameras around that. All right, let's take this analogy of this thing we're trying to observe or protect, and look at Stratford. You said that Stratford is an area where a lot of this is happening. So wouldn't it be wise to have a lot of observers, and that's the scientific method, have observers up there watching in the nighttime when this happens? You said about 4 or 5 in the morning, 6 o'clock. If not, why isn't this being done? Where there's a lot of cameras on at nighttime watching under weather conditions, just like there are weather stations. They get rain all the time. So you have people watching and cameras watching this. And you elaborate on that. If it's being done, and it's not being done, why not?
Did everyone hear his comments well enough? Actually, there are, in many cases, people that do night watches. Gary King, a very good friend of mine, did a night watch with about 10 people. When they expected particular formations to happen, we've had a lot of double dates happening in our calendar at the beginning of the new century, like 777 and 888 and 555 and things like that. And people were out in droves expecting formations. And in fact, they found them. They occurred, there's sometimes a bolt or a flash of light. It was still dark. It was about 4 in the morning. Cameras were set up. They caught the flash on film. And as the sun began to rise, there were huge formations in the field. So that very experiment has been done, and it's been done numerous times. There's also instances where Colin Andrews himself was set up by the BBC to do that, and they actually were hoaxed formations that he was tricked into believing were real. So it really depends, but that very same thing has happened. Let me tell you, there's no money in crop circle research. If you want to pay a cameraman to go stand in a field all night, most good quality cameramen get about $500 a day. If you want to get 4 or 5 of them to stay out all night, that's a hefty penny on your own dime. And most of us fund our own research. You're welcome. I took some of those pictures out in lieu of time, but yes, I had several pictures of state parks with just long grass. There's pictures of, they happen in snow. I showed you some pictures of sand. And they don't always happen smack in the middle of the field. Sometimes you find a formation half formed in a field and half of it's lost on the road. Yes, they happen all over the place and not necessarily just in crops. Last question. The question was, will increased air pollution contribute to crop formations? I don't really think so, although I can't say I know for sure. I think that we need to pay attention to the sun and what's going on with our sun right now. You're hearing a lot of reports of the fact that we're getting more and more sun flares. We have to get ready for a major big one that's supposed to happen in 2012. It could melt our electronics and things like that. I think that studying these, I think the real key thing to come out of crop circle research is the fact that seeds from formations have been known to grow without light and without water after they get started. Lemongood throws out his seed samples after 12 days of germination studies, and he leaves them in a bag in his basement. 3 months later, he goes in and he finds this crop growing. If we have a problem with our sun, and we need to know that we can grow crops, we need to know how to grow them without sun or without water. And I think that's the most significant thing that comes out of the crop circle research. And the fact is, too, if someone is trying to communicate with us, my God, they're putting it in our food. You'd think that we'd find it, we'd study it, we'd understand it. Is someone trying to affect us biologically, consciously? I don't know. I don't think this is the sole answer to the crop circle riddle, but I think this is part of looking at the science, and you don't get anyone's respect, especially in MUFON, if you don't look at the science of something first. So thank you very much.
Well, that was quite
What do you
long,
think, Lee?
Well, again, it seems to be pointing out the same things we'd kind of discussed last time about, the crop circles and stuff. There's plenty of science been done on them. Yeah. Like the fact that they continue growing without light or water.
Yeah.
And
she said something very interesting right at the very end there. They're putting it in our food.
Yeah.
Whatever this message is. Now think about that.
Yeah.
Because it's mostly cereal type crops, wheat, corn,
it makes
things
you
like
think,
that.
Is that part of the upgrade kind of thing? You know what I mean? Is that how they upgrade? Because
and they're feeding this to people. They still harvest those crops.
There you go.
And Cisco and I were talking about that the other night. They ought to just take those crops and make crop circulos, put it in a box, and then charge $50 a box, and then people would buy it. Let's start a Kickstarter to do that. Because otherwise,
Yeah. I mean, it's really surprising. I mean, look.
Hey, Justin.
If the hypothesis of us being created by another beings, like I said, I thought we were seeded from Martians. I think this is why our circadian rhythm is Mars based. And that, if that is, how do we know that our genetics isn't manipulated, and the way that they do it is through our food?
Yeah.
Because it'd be untraceable like that,
Well, they've got the GMO foods, And now a lot of things proudly, non-GMO, but how long did we eat the GMO stuff, the genetically modified
There you go. We don't
organisms?
know these answers, and we've been eating grain, i.e. bread, for thousands of years. We've been eating cheese for thousands of years.
And it's also in the grain that they give to livestock.
There
They feed
you
it to
go.
cows. They
There
feed
you
it to
go. So
chickens.
it's
They
in
feed
the
it to
meat.
pigs.
It's in the meat then
It's
that
in
you eat
everything.
from a cow. It's in the chicken that you eat. It's in the eggs. It's in, it's everything. Now, if there was a way to mess with DNA with science, obviously advanced science, we're talking, maybe billions of years ahead of what we can even comprehend. So forget about all we know, because we know nothing. As a species and as a learned species, yes, we have some great mathematicians and we have some great psychologists and we have some great doctors and the rest of it. But there's elements they don't understand. They don't understand what the soul is and where it resides and where it starts and where it stops. Those kind of things. It could be the link of how we are created and how we are manipulated and how we are driven and why we search to learn more, why we want to head back out to the stars. What's that about?
Yeah.
What is it about human beings that, for a start, we're nothing like any of the other animals really on this planet? We stand apart from them all. Most animals on this planet have some sort of interaction with each other or a need for each other. Either one feeds on the other, which feeds on another, which feeds on another, which feeds on another. Like the plants and all these things. And yes, we eat these foods, but the link always sends me back to the Mars things. Why are we so determined to look out into space and think we belong there?
Mm-hmm.
What is that? That fundamentally for me, that is because if we truly belonged here, wouldn't we feel like we're fine and we're happy? We don't
Feel like
need,
we're home and we want to conquer the planet,
there
but
you
if we
go.
want to conquer the stars instead,
Yeah.
or go back to where
Well,
we
not so
came
much
from.
conquer. I'm talking explorative. Why is there this need to remove ourselves from here and search for something else? You could say it's the search for other life and other intelligences to know that we're not alone. But I think that's a spiritual thing. That is.
Yeah.
That I think if you're not content with yourself, you need more, and you're always looking for external validation. And I think that's a lot to do with that. And I think you need to find some inner peace before you.
And I think that goes back to the dawn of time. There's cave drawings of the moon and the stars and stuff. Those guys sat there without even language and drew those pictographs on the wall of the stars and things. They knew there was something up there. They wanted to figure out what it was.
And there was such significance to the stars, weren't they? Because we ended up using them to guide us, to take us places, to
use it for navigation.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So, I think it's a fundamental thing, why we're so interested in out there. When we know physiologically there's not a capability of us traveling anywhere.
Yeah.
But if our true being, our true self is spirit, just putting this out there, it's just a hypothesis, then maybe that's the way we travel anyway. That we travel through the power of thought, which is instantaneous. Don't worry about light and all, speed of light and all this, and it'll take thousands of years to get here and get there. No, the speed of thought. If you can think that place, you can be there. Boom.
Good point. And, I liken it to migratory animals, birds and things like that. They know that there's a place that they need to go to, and they fly there. They navigate by whatever innate sense they have to navigate, and they return to the same place. They've tagged birds, those Canadian geese and stuff that used to pass through Tennessee. They follow that same route north and south every single year and stop in a lot of the same places.
There you
So
go. So it
who's to
does.
say that there's not something in
Yeah.
our DNA, our migratory path, but instead of somewhere on
But it's
Earth, it's
somewhere around
out
here.
there.
It's out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that, like I said, that I mean, I think, you know, I mean, it's easy, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, we're just
these
spitballing.
flights of fancy and stuff that we do, but it's interesting. It's interesting to hypothesize and to imagine a greater existence. But what is that about fundamentally? Why do we have this idea of spirit? And that's been around for thousands of years. The idea that we continue in a different form, that didn't just pop out of the air. Why is that so fundamental and so strong in us? You know, that we don't just write it off. I mean, there is a lot of people that think there's just nothing after death and stuff like that. But I tend to think, well, you know, even on a scientific basis, you know, if you're scientific and you're not religious or whatever like that, or you don't believe in these things, scientifically speaking, they can't explain it, and they can't explain consciousness, you know, and they can't explain the idea of spirit. And why would so many people that have had these near-death experiences come back with a very similar story of meeting like the engineers or whatever they're called, you know, the machine elves, I think they call them, don't they? That's on a different plane of because you see, we are so tiny in our perception of dimension, because we are fourth dimensional beings living in a third dimension with third dimensional universe kind of thing through our perspective. In other words, we can see in 3 dimensions because we are at the 4th dimension. So you're always the one above looking down, looking into the dimension that you're in. Like, for instance, if you're 2-dimensional thing, you'll only see a line that way and a line that way. You know what I mean? So like, it'd be like, oh wow, that's a nice looking edge over there. You know, it's a why are we so, like I said, why are we so determined to say that? It's like, I'm sure I speak for a lot of people here, but again, it's just a hypothesis. It's just spitballing. The idea of spirit, that this is a vessel, like a spacesuit kind of thing.
This is our Earth suit.
And the only way that we can comprehend matter and interaction with, you know, the plant species and the rest of it, and gathering information in this format, that's the only way we can do it, because as spirit, or as the original entity that we are, these things are impossible to digest, or they're impossible to understand, because our level is so much beyond what this corporeal existence is. So to understand the corporeal existence, we share ourselves with a part of ourselves, or whatever, with like a link to this thing, hence the tether kind of thing. Maybe we are tethered to our original selves, as they like to say. And this is like a little tendril that we send out. You know, we could be quantum physics actually sticks up for this idea that we could be a central entity somewhere, you know, in existence, and this is one of the tendrils of our existence that we are experiencing. We are just this is just one of the tendrils of our existence, experiencing what it is to be corporeal, what it is to touch and feel matter, because in the other dimension that we exist from, we cannot touch or feel or sense things like that. We are just pure energy.
Yeah.
And the reason why I always say about the energy thing, because it comes back to frequency again, that we are supposed to, we know that the thing that drives this whole machine that we are walking around in every day is a spark of electricity. Now, electricity isn't, I don't know I can't remember how you actually express this, but it's something that can only disperse and move. It can't be destroyed. I can't remember what there's a word for it, but
Yeah.
it evades me right now.
Yeah,
But
I know what you're talking about.
you understand what I mean. Now, if that tiniest of sparks that can hardly be registered, I think, what is it, 6 ohms or something like that, it might even be smaller than that, that drives this whole machine that we are so, we think is so incredible, which it is. Some people would call it a meat suit, but
Yeah.
but incredibly, we are driven by this spark of electricity, and that spark disappears once you cease. Right, once the functions of this suit fail, right? So to me, I see it as a failure of a suit. Your energy essence returns back to source because it's gathered its information, it's done what it wanted to do. Your tendril, I see, that's what that was about. And now let's move, let's send something over here to have a look over here. Let's send something over here to have a look at here. You get me? Like our brain makes new waveforms to gather information, doesn't it? New pathways, that's it, new pathways.
And it depending on what you're doing, the brain waves change. If you're sleeping, if you're in deep thought, if you're creating, if you're doing something enjoyable.
Absolutely.
So
how do we know our actual existence isn't more likened to a brain, but as an energy format? So that, like I said, this is a memory that we are reinterpreting to understand or to use information from, and this is but a brief moment. We think it's time because the way we have invented time. Like the way that when you're a child, time seems ever so long, and the reason for that is because you're constantly learning new things, so it seems amazing. Whereas as you get
when
older,
you're 5 years old, and summer seems so long, it's because you're only 5 years to measure it by.
Yeah.
But the older you get, the shorter
the older
time
you get, the shorter the time, because
a year.
you
It's just like that
understand
because
things.
I've had 60 of them.
Yes, because you've done that same thing so often, it's you're nonchalant about that episode, that action. Whereas if you notice when something either incredibly great happens or incredibly horrid happens, those moments last a long time, don't they?
Yeah.
When you're in a deep depression over something, those moments last so long. It takes you so long.
And then the other side of that, sometimes I'll keep going back to a memory that doesn't really stand out for anything in particular.
Yeah.
Nothing sad or horrific or anything like that. But I'll just have a memory that just resurfaces, just boom, it's crystal clear. Where'd it come from? Why did my brain choose to think of that at that very moment? What triggered that emotion or that memory? Strange. The brain is a strange organ.
What about that? That's the craziest thing. A smell will remind you of a childhood memory that you'd even forgotten, but it's still there. Those tendrils are still there. Now imagine that as spirit, right? As the whole brain sort of thing, as spirit, quantum physically, and that this is just one of those tethers that is a memory that's interpreting this existence, or using the human body as the suit to gather the information that it's, you want to understand, that you want to understand all species in the universe, kind of thing. Imagine being more than corporeal and higher density than 5D or 6D or 7D, dimensional. Yeah. Therefore, this existence would be like us drawing a picture.
Yeah. And the thing about those
we're
dimensions,
drawing a picture into 2D, so therefore we are entering that 2-dimensional world when we write.
And we experience these dimensions, but then we're part of this dimension and other dimensions, and then it's
at the same time.
I see it as like a fractal. You drill down.
It's a fractal
there
part.
it is
It's
again.
a portion.
You drill down. There it is again.
No different. Like I say, it might. It's just like I said. We're just rambling and but no different to, like I said, when we as 3-dimensional, living in 3 dimensions from the 4th dimension, viewing the 3rd dimension, when we draw a picture of anything, we are drawing a two-dimensional image. That is entering that two-dimensional domain without entering the two-dimensional domain. You know?
Mind
The
blowing.
same as if we, So if we draw a line, that's entering the 1 degree, the first dimension. It's like you can step down, but we can't step up.
Yeah.
So that's what the whole thing intrigues the absolute hell out of me. It's just fabulous. It's great conversation. It's great
It is.
to get the old brain
Yeah.
juices flowing on that one. It's great. Love it. Yeah.
Well,
Full
folks.
circles. See, how do we know that's not ourselves
Indeed.
as a collective trying to to awaken us to the realization that we are tendrils of ourselves, experiencing corporeal existence.
It's not necessarily we experience it laterally, but we don't remember it laterally. It's just bits and pieces pulled from everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, folks, there you go. We've given you something to think about till next week. Leave us some comments if any of this makes sense, or if you want to challenge any of this or have your own ideas. We're just tossing it out here.
Yeah.
There are no hard,
we're
fast
just
rules.
spitballing. It's just it's just a chat,
Well, with that, we're going to go ahead and get on out of here for this episode of From Beyond. Lee, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks,
Everybody
Steve.
in the
That was
chat,
wonderful.
people
Yeah.
watching in the future, hello.
Yes. Hello,
And,
future people. Hello.
We'll see you tomorrow night over
You
on
time-traveling
Radio
devils, you.
1FA. And what is Radio 1FA?
Yeah, tomorrow it's Radio 1FA, back-to-back original tracks. It's a full pint, mate, not half.
I love that. But again, thanks for being here. Remember to like, share, subscribe, hit that bell so you'll be aware. Of course, right now we're just doing one show a week on Wednesdays, but there'll be some production videos coming up later on. But thanks again for being here. Join Lee on his channel and join me over on Tales Untold and Missing Persons Mysteries and my radio show. Everything out there on the Clyde Lewis Ground Zero Radio Network. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a good night. Lee, play us
Night,
out.
everybody. Peace. Night, buddy.